anime fans experience for such a long time is like dubs suck, but why would I want to watch a dub? Dubs are ass. What subs all the way? That's the only way to watch it. which is hilarious to me. Rhinehold is finally understanding
No,
being an anime fan.
I've heard this whole argument before, and everybody's like, "Oh, watch the sub, don't do the dub. Dubs suck." And I'm like, okay. And I never really got it until I sat down and compared the two, and it's just like that voice acting just so bad. And I feel sorry for people who don't have the option. I mean, there are people like my wife. She doesn't like subtitles. She doesn't like reading while she's watching TV. You know, she can't do that. It throws her out.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I'd
Hi,
much rather
I'm right
read. I'd much rather read it than and have the acting matching the voice, the voice characterizations and the movements of the mouth and all that. Even though it's Japanese, I can still get inflections from it. I can still see it's better acted. So now sometimes it may not be better acted. I'd imagine there's a whole argument to be probably made, but for me, that was a thing. A real big
Yeah,
thing for me.
I mean, I have had people point out, like, you don't know when the Japanese voice actor was just mailing it in because
Yeah.
you
Don't know. I'm not that fluent in Japanese. I know like 20 words, maybe. Not. It's not like I can fluently speak it, but I have heard enough people talk Japanese that I can get enough. I can get the way they speak, the kind of the way
the tonality and inflection.
Yeah, just the way it goes, way it feels. I do that with Spanish a lot. I know a lot more Spanish than I do Japanese, of course, but you can still tell the difference in the way they speak because it is different than English. It's a different flow.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
well, I'm glad that you're experiencing the true anime experience. And to be fair, a lot of the dubs are of questionable quality up until like
2005.
I was thinking like 2012, 2013 when they actually had money and budget and they could actually have not have to censor guns with shoes on, with boots on.
yeah, some of the
springs.
sound effects were off too. I noticed in the dubs in that, so it sounded much better.
Yeah, that because a lot of the time, because of the era that it came out of, it was heavily censored because it's a cartoon. This is for kids. Let's remove all the good, the stuff that makes the thing interesting and awesome.
Might have been a missing scene or two, like little piece of scene. Like
absolutely.
I think in the first episode, there's a scene where Katarina, I think her name is Katrina or Katarina, I can't remember, but he goes, Asimov goes in the back room, and then there's a shot of her basically resting her breast on the bar. I don't think that was in the one that I saw on Crunchyroll.
Oh, probably not.
God, no,
probably not. Especially not on Crunchyroll.
Especially Crunchyroll.
Yeah, you got the
full raw deal. Because Crunchyroll. Now you understand why anime fans aren't that happy with Crunchyroll taking of like Funimation going like away and everything rolling under Crunchyroll. It's because Crunchyroll they do things. Trust me, I think there's a good compilation roll of stuff that Crunchyroll has like done. It's not as bad as Chinese censors of anime, but it's still pretty bad. But anyways,
that explains why it doesn't feel as choppy. When I was watching on Crunchyroll, the whole thing felt real choppy, and this didn't. It flowed better. And I thought maybe it was just the English, the lack of the English dubbed and the voicing matching what was being, the mouthing and everything. It may just be that they were cutting out little bits and pieces here too that kind of just didn't feel right.
Yep,
probably yeah. I've got the whole series on DVD, dub and sub. I get the dub because my wife, she doesn't watch subtitles. My daughter will do subtitles, but since she's just learning how to read, I have to. It sucks because I have to pause the pause button. But got to make sure my daughter's elite before she gets to middle school.
Yeah, see, like mine, I'm interchangeable. Like I watched the first half of Witch of Mercury in Japanese.
Are we still booing me now?
Half.
Yeah, you think Netflix is still superior? That stays until
I didn't say that. I just
Like,
said
kind of the
I
dub.
like the way that it presents. I said I have to watch both of them and on the storyline.
Yeah.
To determine.
Netflix, I'm gonna need that Netflix to come down.
But
was that?
I love John. I love John. I love the actor.
Let me tell you.
So
I'm telling you, yes,
Mhm.
yeah. 10 years ago, an amazing jet. 10 years ago,
And
Spike.
I'm not
It's
gonna.
Spike, not Jet.
Spike.
yeah, Spike, yeah,
Spike is the one.
yeah, Spike, yeah. 10 years ago, amazing, great, played that off well.
I'm not gonna talk shit about the actors. They
Yeah.
just applied for the job. It's
Correct.
the director that cast them and then gave them the direction that happened.
Yeah,
Yep. And then the screenwriters writing a bad script and ruining things. But
yeah.
that's
Trust me, yeah. Because I like John Cho. I thought he was great in a whole bunch of different things, but let's hear that. Anyways, hello everybody, and welcome to an exciting episode of Low Key on the Wheeler Chairs Network. My name is Harry, aka the Movie Target, and so we just kind of continue the conversations as we are back from our 2-week suspension because Rhinehold got us kicked off of YouTube for saying that Netflix Cowboy Bebop is superior to the anime. Just blipped us, got the whole channel kicked off. I didn't even want to fight it. I didn't fight it. I was just like, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Thanks for letting us come back at all.
I think it does qualify as hate speech.
Fight it. We're fighting it. Anyways, that Disembodied Voice is we've got producer Escalpage. Hello, Escalpage.
Hello, everybody. Glad to make it to one finally. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, we got producer Paul in the building is great, and the other person we've got as we continue to boo him until he finally ranks the Netflix Cowboy Bebop where it belongs at the bottom. Rhinehold, you just say hi.
Hello, and I took that 2 weeks off and rewatched She-Hulk and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so I got some palate cleanser, so I can go back and try some more anime.
That's a lie. He has not rewatched that since there's no rewatchability in that show. He's never rewatched that. He watched it one time.
Actually, I watched many people react to it.
Except Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He probably rewatched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'll give him that. She-Hulk, no. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., yes. Because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. apparently just a bunch of Easter eggs and some goofy stuff for like the people who can get through it. She-Hulk, other than Wong, there's nothing to watch for She-Hulk.
Season 4 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is possibly some of the best TV I've ever seen.
Yeah, doubt. Yeah, Heroes is probably better. Anyways, the other person we've got here laughing.
First season of Heroes wasn't bad either.
Yeah.
I watched second and third seasons of Heroes before I watched She-Hulk. Anyways.
Oh, Velma season 2, by the way, in case you were
we don't
sitting
talk
on
about
pins
that
and needles.
Show. We don't talk about that show.
All right, no, that's your one and only warning. We don't talk about that. Okay, we don't mention it. It doesn't exist.
I was showing something to Heather the other day, and it's an ad for it popped up, and I'm like, "Oh, hey!" She started laughing. So,
all right, okay, all right. Anyways, Vincent, why don't you go ahead and say hi to the people?
Hey everyone, we're back a week late because I was dying last week, so that didn't help. Literally could not use my voice at all, so that was terrible.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's fine. This is my last Vincent clone. Usually when I end up cloning Vincent, it just doesn't work out. So I just stopped.
Yeah,
you remember the show Multiplicity, the movie Multiplicity?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's like he's like the third iteration of Michael Keaton. You can't say full sentences, and
so none of the books ever get done because the ideas leave with the body.
Yep.
I was actually reading up on that, how he really took that role seriously, and that's why he didn't do the Batman the third Batman, was because he was focusing on Multiplicity because he really believed in that project. So and we worked really hard to make sure all the characters, you could tell which character it was by the acting of it. So he was really happy with it. So
it was really it is very well done, and it does.
His acting was great in it. I give him that.
Yeah. All right, and we got some chats. Yep, this is one of my favorite chats right here. This one here.
Are we booing?
You sir.
There's like 5 things.
We got my mom here to boo Rhinehold. This is great. This is my mom. Yep. Boo this man. Yeah.
Hi, Ron.
Yeah. It was up. Yep.
Yeah. No, I just was curious what specifically, or was it just general that I'm on this show?
It's just the Netflix comment. Honestly, once that ranked down, that goes away. That'll go away.
Okay. Is it so? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. If that's what I just wanted to make sure I understood what it was I said.
Oh, yeah. That's what you. Yeah. Yeah. Boo. Trust me.
I thought it was the one that got me thrown out for a minute.
I did want to throw you off the show. I was like, Vincent had to calm me down. Okay. All right. I was in like a 3-hour meeting with your leader. It's going to kick you off the whole network. Actually, I had your contract in front of the shredder.
I protected it.
We've lost so many people on the network. I kind of have to keep my spot, right? Have to give me some leeway. We've lost like 4 people.
Yeah. Well, when I was talking to dear leader about kicking you off the network, he said he'd have to get someone else to replace you, and he kept showing me this other person who was leaving from, I think, some network called the Daily Wire, and I didn't want her, so I was like, no, I'll keep Rhinehold. That's fine. I'll keep Rhinehold.
Well, you didn't want a white blonde girl with legs to be on the show. generic white blonde girl.
Yeah, if I want one, I can get one. Less on the budget too. Anyway, so tonight's show is going to be a fun one. This one, because we took some time off and I gave it to Vincent to bake some ideas. Rhino was supposed to bake some, but he's too busy watching crappy shows on Netflix. So, like, this one is baked from Vincent. So, yes, Rhinehold, yes, I'm going to just run that till the joke goes dry, or I feel better about.
So I feel better about myself.
No, I already feel great about myself. But I
feel you're working on stuff I like, and okay.
Yes.
You're the one with the controls. I got nothing I can do about it.
I mean, you could do something about it.
Yeah, well, we're on your show. You could do something about it.
Or you could just
I have to follow the contract. So.
Yep.
Like better things.
I arguably do, but that's just my point. So.
Yeah, sure you did. Anyways, all right, go ahead, Vincent, introduce the topic.
So while we were gone, there is a YouTuber I follow called The Comic Storian, and he did a video. Both of these videos that we're going to talk about are already posted in the Low Key Wall channel in the Discord if you guys want to go out and watch them. But it was about why it appears that manga is destroying comics in the public eye, basically. Just through sales wise, if you look at the sales, it looks like it's massively beating it out, especially just visually based on especially bookstore sales because of a whole bunch of things we'll get into. And with that, I was just going to run with that. But then also today, the YouTuber Ackman released a video about the decline of AAA games and why that's the case, and the whole premise of what AAA used to be and why it existed and why it's now basically crumbling. And I saw a solid common thread between the two, so I'm just going to link them both together. So I'll talk about each video individually, and then we'll do an overall connection.
Yeah.
So the Comic Storian video, he was talking about that he's a comic book YouTuber. He has a comic book channel. He talks about comic books, does full stories where he reads out the comic books. That's his channel. He also has a manga Storian channel, which is also where he does the same thing, but with manga and stuff and such. So he has a vested interest in both of the markets succeeding. And from his opinion, comic books aren't dying; they're doing perfectly fine. But the issue is that it's hard to track the sales of comic books as of right now, especially after COVID happened, because after COVID, they stopped really tracking the sales of individual comic books in an easily trackable manner. You actually have to like sign up for an analytics website to actually get the analytics of how much floppies are actually selling.
Publicly,
yeah. So it's really hard to actually track what's selling for comic books.
Correct.
Right. And one of the big thing is that a lot of people are saying that manga is just destroying comic books, because if you go to like bookstores, because that's what you'll see, because that's what a lot of people see when it comes to that stuff, because the comic book store market is kind of shrinking, or they're changing to be more of a variety store instead of just a comic book store. The bookstores have so much more sections for manga compared to comic books, and the comic books also, they don't have like giant floppy sections for new comics coming out. They have giant sections for manga. And when you look at the sales of manga and stuff, in the video, he pulls up the analytics for graphic novels and manga and stuff. Out of like the top 10 graphic novels, it's like all manga, and then like old Batman stories. like the top 20, in the top 20 you have like Killing Joke and Long Halloween, and that's it. So all the popular graphic novels that are being sold, according to the statistics based on the month he pulled it from, weren't even released in this decade. They were written early 2000s, 1990s, early 2000s. But then you have like Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen and Fire Emblem and all these newer series and mangas that are constantly getting bought because they come in bunches as manga. And they're much more affordable than the hardback covers for comics, for the collections of runs. So visually, when people go to bookstores, because those are the ones that people see more in the public eye, it looks like manga is destroying comic books and all the statistics, especially when you get sales, because for sales for manga, it's all-time sales for whatever manga that they're buying. So there was like somebody tweeted that like Demon Slayer outsold all comic books in a month, but it was all of Demon Slayer, the entire series of Demon Slayer, compared to the floppy comics. So it's just wasn't a correct number. Right. And in the video, Benny, who's the host, was talking about some of the reasons why this is the case. So when it comes to the comic book, it's comic books, when they send the whole bundles of graphics, the graphic novels, nothing's numbered. There are a bunch of different runs connected side by side to each other that have no connections to one another. So if you want to pick up a Batman story, you don't know which of these Batman stories are connected in any way. So it's on the shelves next to each other, you'll have like Killing Joke and Long Halloween, and people will buy them side by side and not realize they're not connected at all. Also, the fact that a lot of they're way more expensive because of how many people are working on it, and it's in full color and hardback, and they have to make the money back based off of, the cost of the individual floppies. So if I wanted to buy one graphics novel, it's $45 when I can buy a $15 manga right across the street.
They got a stack
of them if I really wanted to, depending on what it is for that $45. And then there's also the fact that a lot of these comics don't have the free marketing that manga has. Because for manga, if I wanted to, like last season, they had Frieren. That manga series follows the plot of the anime. So if I watched the anime and got really invested in the anime, I can go pick up the next volume of the manga and follow along where it was in the anime. So they just have massive free marketing when you have all these shows that are like all these anime shows that market for the manga,
Well,
and people buy it because of it.
I'm not exactly gonna call that free marketing when a
It's
series like
not,
that
yeah.
costs hundreds of thousands of
It's not
dollars.
free marketing, but it's marketing nonetheless. Because like,
Yeah.
if you want to compare it to if I was watching, the Daredevil show,
Mhm.
and I want to go, oh, I want to watch what happens next with Daredevil. It's like, cool. Whose run do you want to read?
Right. Yeah, it's freaking
Well,
confusing.
this one's roughly based off of these two runs put together. So you need both of these, and then this run here, and then you'll have an idea what Daredevil really is.
Right.
Yeah. So, in my experience as a fairly casual comic book cape shit enjoyer, I will say that the plethora of continuities is one of the biggest reasons why I don't decide to actually drop money on anything, because I never know how long it's gonna last. I never know
Hit the
if
wrong
it's
button.
worth actual time and money being put into this.
Right, because you never know if the run is actually going to be a lasting run, or the run's just going to randomly end, or the universe is going to end,
Or get reset for no reason, and none
Yeah.
of what I read matters.
Correct. Yeah. It all is different, and and they just continue it, and you don't really know when to start. It's because like the Dragon Ball Z saga, it's a saga. It's this line that I can pick up. I know exactly where I can start, and then back. Technically, I should be able to find the end.
Technically.
And then when it comes to Superman, it's just like, what if you got like close to 100 years of baggage of what crap I want to read from this thing, and a lot of the times some things don't make sense, some things don't line up anymore, and you're right, it's freaking annoying. And you're right, the TV shows don't line up with the comics, and it's done that way, feels like on purpose.
I think the purpose is that why tell the exact same story again when you have a chance to tell a different story or make change, because if I've read the comic book, why do I want to complete the retelling of it on video?
Man, you hear all those Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings fans right now.
That's what I'm saying. I don't get it. I mean, I'm watching Wheel of Time. Everybody's complaining it's not exactly like the books. I've read the books. I don't, if you can.
That's not what we're saying. Not what we're saying. Because those are you talk about the story and just adapted for the medium that it's doing to. They're not talking about complete left turns or mashing different runs together. That's what we're discussing. It's not that like Wheel of Time eventually was following the book and then immediately for some reason I don't read Wheel of Time, but it just crossed into Superman's universe and just started playing with Superman for some freaking reason. There's no like weird turns. I'm just like, okay, this was nowhere near this book. There's nowhere near this run. These things don't make sense. That's what we're talking about.
And there's a big difference between, better fleshing out the story in some part, moving an element from, say, the third book forward to the first season to better give the viewer a reason to care about a character or something like that. There are different ways that the media influences how you tell the story that I agree with. You have to adapt it to. And even the Peter Jackson films are a good example. That, like, Aragon's entire side quest to go get the dead men of Dunhollow, and I'm probably misremembering names, which makes me a bad Tolkien fan, but
You're fine.
that was greatly abridged in the movies because it was kind of an out of the way aside that works in a book but doesn't work at all when you're telling a more linear movie story.
Did it work in the book really, or did it just need a better editor, since he really didn't have an editor fixing his stuff or saying, hey, maybe this doesn't make sense, we shouldn't go down path, and people are just so beholden to it that they feel like it has to be part of the, or it's not the same thing.
Well, damn, Rhinehold, when you and your editor get together and define a genre, you can fucking clap back then.
No, I'm just saying. No. I'm not clapping back at it. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying, is it because of that that tangent was necessarily not the best thing for the story, and maybe an editor would have picked up on that and said, hey, maybe we cut this part out. I mean, GRRM gets hit with that a lot. Wheel of Time, the guy writing Wheel of Time, his wife was his editor, and there are times where people have gone back and read that and said, you could have maybe not spent all this time doing this and got back on track faster, and the story would have flowed better if you had done that, and you kind of made it a little bumpy. There's a thing in the book series called The Slog, which is like 3 books where a lot of stuff just doesn't really move forward enough. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people complain. Said, if he had a better editor, maybe that could have flowed better, and it would have been a better experience. And is sometimes when you take that stuff and you put it into a different medium like that, you have the opportunity to go back and kind of fix some of that stuff. I think that's what that may be happening, and a lot of people might be complaining about that because it's not a 1-for-1 telling. As I know these people who do complain about it that way.
You're left field.
You are. Yeah. I'm not saying you guys are, and this is something I'm just saying that can happen.
I will freely admit that when somebody comes along and thinks that they have a better idea of how a character should be, or a better idea of how the narrative should be than the author, and it isn't justified, like my examples earlier of moving things around or trimming them down a little bit to fit the flow better, that's fine. But some of these people that adapt just take liberties that should not be taken.
Here's a great example.
Talking back into the
Batman the Animated Series, right? It was its own distinct continuity of Batman. It's how it was set in its own world. It followed its own rules. It created things that changed the comic book landscape, like Harley Quinn and other characters, and changed how characters' backstories existed because of Batman the Animated Series. And then they made a comic book series that it continued called Batman the Animated Series. That was a comic book set in the same continuity. But if you weren't going to that one, I would want to, let's say I watched Batman the Animated Series and I go, cool, I want to know more about this Joker character. And I get the Killing Joke, and it's nothing like the continuity that I was watching on the TV show. And it's like, this isn't the same character.
Right.
Well, this isn't what I was been invested in with this TV show that I've enjoyed all this time. This Harley Quinn isn't like the TV Harley Quinn. I don't why this just doesn't match what I enjoy about these characters, because these characters are written differently by different people with different interpretations on how Batman is. I watch Batman the Animated Series and I get a comic book like Tom King's Batman run, where Batman's just an asshole half the time and is dealing more with him trying to marry Black Catwoman than it is, and dealing with the Court of Owls than it is dealing with Batman.
But I think if they don't take those chances and do those things, they don't have that genre defining stuff that happens. Like, look what was happening to Batman for years until, the Dark Knight, was it the Dark Knight, the one where they made him as an old guy, and that it basically Dark Knight Returns. That's it. They redefined basically the idea of Batman, and it stuck into the rest of these stories going forward. That kind of vibe and feel that he put into it, because, like I said, it was kind of floundering for a bit before that happened.
Yes, but the Dark Knight Returns has its own contained narrative that's individual, and with sequels that are directly connected to it with the name of Dark Knight Returns on it. So if I wanted to continue reading Dark Knight Returns, I would just pick up the sequel book.
Yeah. But yeah, I know there was a time when I was reading comics back in the 90s, you'd buy 4 different Batman series, and they were all kind of leaping across each one, right? It wasn't like 4 different Batman universes. It was a lot of times the same story across 4 different titles.
But that's the issue, is that as of right now, a lot of it is, well, we have 4 different Batman stories, all telling 4 different Batman tales at the same time in different interpretations of the same universe.
Correct.
Is that better or worse, though?
Right. It becomes more confusing.
It's the floppies that's selling.
Down.
It's the floppies that's selling, because nothing else is really much selling in that universe besides that. That's so they're going to pump them out as much as they can. Right. But like, it is freaking, is it? But we're just talking about like just brand confusion for people who going back in between the 4. Think about like even in the 90s, I sat there and watched Spider-Man the animated, Spider-Man anime series in the 90s and X-Men. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I'm gonna get a comic book, and was like, what the f is this crap?
I do have that issue.
This isn't interesting. Yeah, the Clone Saga was like, this isn't interesting. I've got to read what, and I remember like my cousin trying to give me a book, like the
omnibus,
some floppies to read. I was like, this will catch you up. I'm like, I'm not doing that.
That's the problem I've always had before too. Is like I said, okay, I love this Deadpool character. All right. And now the movies are out and people are like, oh, I like to read more Deadpool. Where do you tell them to go start at?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Or Ghost Rider.
But if you said to me and you looked at me and I showed you some initial D and you go, where do I get started? I know exactly where to start you at. Book 1. It's easy. It's book 1.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Book 1.
It's one of those things of like, if you get let's say you get random clips of Demon Slayer and it's like, oh man, this animation's crazy and its fights are interesting. I really like these characters. Where do I start? Here's number 1, and just continue on till when it ends.
Yep. I think the only thing that comes close to that is Gundam. When someone goes like, I want to watch some Gundam, it's like, okay, what universe?
Is it partly because of who owns the rights to the characters? I mean, like Todd McFarlane owns Spawn, right? He created his own studio for that reason, created Spawn. When you tell people to go watch Spawn, read Spawn, you go to start at 1. Right? You can't do that with Superman or Batman or Spider-Man or because the studios own them and they have just different writers and different inkers all the way through these decades and decades. It's kind of hard to do that. It would be better if they stopped the story and started with a different story going forward.
Right. They can't make new
character.
They can't make new characters and they can't move things on,
Yeah. Right. Because from what I understand is the reason there's a lot of writers will tell the same story because they have different interpretations of the same story. There was a point in the Batman run where they had 3 different writers and all 3 of them destroyed Gotham. One after the other after the other. Like one run ended, Gotham was rebuilt, and they destroyed Gotham again. And they got rebuilt and they got destroyed again. 3 runs in a row, 3 different authors, but all of them had 3 different villains, because if they make a villain and it catches on and people like the villain, they'll get residual for making this villain. And the biggest thing to do for Batman is destroy Gotham because he loves Gotham.
And I think what Donovan just said and what Harry both said kind of lead me to the conclusion that I've had for a while. They can't make new characters and they keep hitting the same plot points. And I think those are 2 symptoms of the bigger problem in Western comics, which is they aren't good at writing and they aren't creative.
Yeah. Not very creative. Well, I think they're not even allowed to be. I think they're very creative. I just think they're allowed to be creative. It's because when they try to go off on their own to go do different things, it's really kind of hard to start something new. Like it's even like this, like we had to go through all of this comics gate crap. Just all it is just people who have comics ideas are just trying to get things funded. It's like, hey, fund my comic, trying to get paid. This thing's paid for. It's fun. It's neat. It's something new. The old guard hates on it, because like, no, don't buy their junk, buy our junk. Rhinehold.
Well, I was just saying that I think it may be more of just a glut of writers. Like you have some really good writers out there, but you also have a lot of really bad ones. And because you're trying to create so many different comics and keep that money afloat. You look at Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man was considered one of the better Spider-Mans of all time, but there were some crap writers that come in after, and there was some that came in before. It's like that can destroy the character. Then you have to bring in a good writer to rebuild the character up in the reader's eyes, get more people reading it again. Then you change out the writer again, and then it goes downhill. So it's that there aren't. It's not that they're not good writers. There's just not enough good writers.
There's not
who are
enough
getting
good
paid
writers,
money
and
to
then
continue doing it.
And then there's also the issue of, especially with the bigger companies, that they are beholden to the big
Characters.
crossover when the company says, hey, this Captain America book is going to affect everybody. Now everybody has to write an issue that involves this Captain America event. No matter what your narrative is, no matter what your story plot is at this point, stop what you're doing, Captain America event.
I haven't kept up in the last 2 decades. Are they doing that more or less than they were doing it back in the 90s?
Roughly the same.
Yep. The other thing is you're really right. There's so many different media. There are not very many good writers out there, and there's never have been that many good writers. But the medium to produce and to create, we're in a glut mode of it, and our colleges have overproduced these elites of writers, designers, and stuff like that. There's so many of them on the system because we've allowed this easy cash flow to allow people to get out with massive 4-year degrees and all these degrees, and they have to get these things. So we have so many of these people, and they're just making things. We've got way too many writers, and some of them suck. But we have so many of them, so we have to write.
And are they getting paid well enough too? That's the other thing. Is you're getting a lot of money for comics. So those writers, if they're good, are going somewhere else. They're going to write for TV. They're going to write for movies.
Yes,
right.
That's why a lot of these Marvel shows we crap on is a lot of these people have hardly any writer's credit. They've gone junk, and when you find out how much they're getting paid, it's oh, that's why they got the freaking job. They freaking got their job, but they only make 45, and they're writing on this freaking Marvel show.
Right, not even literally as I told the story, the writer of Multiverse of Madness was brought in after they scrapped an entire script, given 3 weeks. After 2 weeks, COVID happened, so he didn't even get the full 3 weeks. And then they hired in the new director and got rid of the script that he made for 2 weeks, and he was writing the script while they were filming the movie. And
meanwhile, you've got Deadpool, who Rob Liefeld, who created the character, is involved on set, and the studio did not want the writers on set. They wanted the writers just to write it and walk away. And Ryan Reynolds and Rob Liefeld paid their salary to be on set so that they could make changes during the filming to match as what they were doing. We filmed this thing and it was really cool. We wouldn't envision it before. We can incorporate it into the story now, because the writers were there and they could do a good job for it. So that's the difference in care, I think, that you're seeing in some of these. And you see the result. The Deadpool is a very good. I mean, people love that movie.
So. Yeah. And the new trailer looks nice. It's been some of the best things Marvel has put out in a while.
It's the only things they're putting out this year.
Finally.
Yeah. But so it's got to be good. Stupid writer strike.
But it's not even just that. Is that because the getting the eyes on your product for Western comics is so incredibly difficult because it's all floppies, and a lot of the actual graphic novel things get pushed down, because even when he pulled up for just superhero graphic novels, Marvel and DC weren't even number one. Number one was still an anime. It was still a manga. It was still number one for superheroes. It was My Hero Academia. And then even then the first Marvel one was 18 for a Spider-Man one, which was just all the way down on the list of these things at the comic book shop. So when you have writers that are making indie comics that are what people would want to read, that are innovative and unique, they get buried. Do any of the three of you know about Saga at all?
Excel Saga?
No. The comic book series Saga.
No.
Exactly. But it's a one writer writing one long space epic that they've been writing for years, but nobody knows about it. No one knows what Saga is unless you're in the comic book world and you know people who like Saga and talk about Saga.
How many people are buying? Like I never, when I was in, I'm just going back 20 years ago, right? Because it's been a while since I've walked into a comic book store and bought a comic book. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. They're
But
dying
when
out
I
because
was
of that.
when I was because I specifically aren't anymore, but I wouldn't go in and buy the omnibus comic book or superhero stuff because I was reading them individually as they came out.
Mhm.
Right. So I don't know if they're, I mean, I bought the individual comics, so and that's what people collect. People don't collect the omnibus stuff, right? They don't collect the box, right? So they're buying the others partially because they want to put them in little, plastic diviners and
Sleeves.
stick them in the closet and hope to make money on them in the dozen years.
Well,
which do,
that's the thing is that you hit the two different aspects of it. A lot of people that are like heavily in the comics are going to keep buying the floppies. They're going to buy the floppies because that's what makes the money. Even though once a month they drop a floppy and it's like $10 a floppy now, which is crazy.
Then the alternate covers that you gotta get,
and all that fun stuff. And then you have the other people that are binge readers that wait for an arc to finish, wait for the trade paperback to come out, pick up the trade and move on. So this all this connects together of it feels like there's a lot of hands in the pot to create all these characters, and it creates such a bogging down element of some of these narratives, some of these stories, because you also have, you could have an amazing story, but the artist that they hired is mediocre, and then the inker makes like really bold, heavy lines for no reason because that's their style, and now your narrative is now bogged down by artwork that doesn't match what you wanted it to be.
And on top of that, then you introduce the marketers, then you introduce the studios who want to try to, we need to have a crossover event. Let's get one planned out, that sort of thing, where they're not just letting the writers do the writing. They're not just letting the inkers do the inking. They're not, they're just not letting them work and do what they need to do. Because if you just say, okay, make this comic book, here's your budget, you got to come in under a certain number or above a certain number in sales, or we're going to end up pulling it eventually. But you, the inker, and the writer just get together. Yeah, the artists, you get together and you put something good together and you just go with it and they leave them alone. You're going to get a better product, but that's not what ends up happening. You end up with like you said, you had the multiple covers, you have the holograph card inserts, you have all these different things that they try to do to get people to buy more comics than what they are, instead of putting a better product out. Which is going to roll into the other topic we're getting but it's the same thing.
Yeah, the thing you just said about having one set of writers and artists together and just giving them the money and telling them to just go do it. Welcome to how manga is made. And they go, cool, you're in the big comic book, you have a week to make this, and as long as you make it, we don't care. As long as you
make it and people are buying it, and we're making money on it, good to go.
Exactly. And that's how that's why a lot of the manga stuff works that way, because a lot of it is one or two,
when you get that
one or two individual writers writing the thing, and they're allowed to just completely tell their story. And that's why
same thing with studios nowadays, movie studios nowadays. I mean, look how a lot of really bad movies who are formulaic, who just repeat off each other are coming out, and then you get Everything Everywhere All at Once, where somebody had a great idea and they went with it and they just let them do it.
Yeah.
Right. That's when you get the good stuff, right? When people are allowed to just make the movie who know what they're doing, instead of having, notes and pages every week, and they have to go through the dailies and make sure that this is working and that's working. And you've got all these people sitting in a room going, well, we need to make sure we, cater to this idea, and we make sure we have this thought process here, and this isn't working because it's going to piss off too many people, that sort of thing is always going on. And when you get a studio like I can't remember the name of the studio who did Everything Everywhere All at Once.
It
was 5 something. I can't remember. Anyway, but they're just doing their thing and they're putting out good products left and right.
A21.
So
Yeah, it's
And
that.
look what happened. But then you get the. I don't know how Fallout fell through and was so good, because you had Todd Howard at the helm somewhere in there.
Yeah, because the person who was working on it cared that it was a good representation of their IP.
Yeah,
But
A24. That's what I said. A24.
A24. Yeah, A24. I was thinking, why did I think
Yeah,
5?
Fallout
Five.
shocked the crap
Oh.
out of me. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Now there are some things that some people dislike about it, but those are people who are lore heavy.
And I think they're getting the lore wrong. I was talking to Paul about this Friday because I was like, what is it they're complaining about the lore? And he told me what they were saying. I went and looked it up, and there's a debate about whether it's lore breaking or not, and I don't think it is. But I can see where they think it might be. You know what I'm saying?
It can.
I can see their argument.
That's the beauty of fans. Fans do this.
Right.
Hardcore fans. They're not talking about the quality of the show. They're talking about stuff like that. They are talking about lore, and that's what I like fans discussing about.
2 to 5% of the audience who watched Fallout cared about that.
Yep.
One specific instance.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
but
and
even the guy who wrote the original Fallout
anything about Fallout to enjoy the show. I had my wife watch it; she has enjoyed it.
But if you do read Fallout or play Fallout and you watch that, you're seeing so many little Easter eggs, so many little nods, like the yum yum deviled eggs and the all that stuff is in there, and it's the name of the TV being Radiation King. It's exactly like it is in the game. It's so well done with care on that part. But what's great about it is that it's a universe they're playing in. They're not building or taking away from anything that already came.
Right. Exactly.
As opposed to the comics where you have to use the same characters. Therefore, you have to try to tell all these different, it's harder to do when you have a universe that people love, as opposed to a character that people love. You can play there and do that. GTA 5, they have different stories for GTA 5. Everyone, it's building into a world, so they could make a GTA 5 movie probably and do a really good job of it. I don't know how well it would go over, but it would still, you have that potential.
Yeah, you would think these billion-dollar companies would understand that, but they don't. It seems like something very simple, like, hey, listen, as you tread upon this, you tread upon people's dreams. Be very careful, tread lightly, because you're treading on these people's dreams.
And
that is a stolen quote.
That's where it gets to the point where I'm thoroughly insulted by some of these so-called writers out there. It's like, hey, we have a franchise that people have been begging for some live action, long form content for, I don't know, 20 years. And what are you going to do for us? Yeah, well, I think that the main actor should walk around buck-ass naked for a majority of several episodes.
I think it's a great idea to break Master Chief's visor.
What? No.
Yeah, they broke the visor to show his face underneath the visor of a space helmet that allows him to breathe in space.
Meanwhile, Fallout, they have the character playing inside the helmet, so you can still see his action, his facial acting, right? That's the way to do it. You don't take, you don't.
And then the actor, and I'm going to walk back just a half step from what I said about not attacking the actors, because this man had an opinion and he's fucking idiotic about it. The actor that they had playing Master Chief says, well, you can't really relate to a character you can't see the face of.
Oh my God, I hated that.
In spite of the fact that people have been doing that for 20 fucking years with Chief. In spite of the fact that one of your contemporary series that you're ostensibly competing with, if you were in the same league as it, The Mandalorian, you know what he doesn't do the entire damn time? Walk around buck-ass naked. I mean, take off the helmet. That's the one.
All right. We could beat on this, because I could go through some really old Sentai stuff with helmets on and show the emotion for that, but we're not going to do that. Let's move on to our next topic.
Yeah. So transitioning, because talking about the Fallout things is actually where this quote comes from for what the title of the episode is. The Ackman did a video about the degradation of the AAA market, and how AAA used to be the surefire thing for you to make money because it is the best bet to get return on investment, because a lot of people are going to buy it because it's a big name that people like and people are going to buy it. And how that now AAA is everybody playing it safe and not getting any return on investment, and they're doing things that aren't innovative anymore, even though that some of the big series that became popular as a AAA game were innovative. And how a lot of they have these massive budgets for games that fail, that they could easily split up the budget, make a bunch of smaller games, and they wouldn't be so beholden to whatever happens if their game comes out and it doesn't succeed. And this quote comes from the creator of Fallout. He had a YouTube video where he was talking about him working on the game Outer Worlds, and he was talking about how he was dealing with this character interaction, and there's a combat interaction where he wanted the AI, when they got shot, it would register the damage and check a list of names to see if the person who shot them, their name is on their list. And if it isn't, they add it to the list and how much damage it has. And if they are on the list, they add that number of damage they took to how much damage they already took to decide the aggro. And he writes it out on a blackboard, on a whiteboard, and he calls in a programmer, goes, "Hey, I just need this added. Do you mind doing this real quick?" And he goes, "It'll be 4 weeks." And he goes, "I can do this in 45 minutes. I've done it 3 times already in 3 other games. It's not that hard. Why is it going to take 4 weeks?" And the guy just basically says it's going to take 4 weeks, whatever. And he debated with him until he went and got the supervisor. The supervisor came in and he was like, "Hey, you can't do this." He's like, "Well, let me explain to you what I want, and then you can explain to me why it's going to take 4 weeks." And he explained it, and then the supervisor like cringed, and he's like, "Let me check with a bunch of other departments, and I'll come back to you." And when he comes back, he's like, "The best I can do is 2 weeks." So it'll take 2 weeks for them to fix a 45-minute thing that he said that he could do before lunch. He could program it right then and there and show it to the programmer and how to program it. But because there's so many cooks in the kitchen, there's so many other people in this market, in the programming and the marketing and all this other stuff, that a simple 45-minute fix took 2 weeks to be implemented into a game.
So I have something I can explain a little bit about that. If you do have different groups of people who are coding stuff, you start to have to do a certain type of checking out code system, agreeing upon things, times when you put stuff in the code so you can QA it together at once. That stuff, but that shouldn't take 4 weeks to do. You should be able to put that on the list and have that voted on, agreed to, and into at least QA testing out of dev or whatever. Put it into dev within a week. Correct. But you still can't, like, there's a YouTuber I watch a lot named Pirate Software. He makes games. He used to work for Blizzard and a bunch of other stuff, doing a bunch of intrusion detection, things like that. So that's where he kind of gets his thing. But he's making games now, and he sits there for hours a night writing this game and talking to his audience. And he'd be like, "Okay, I'm going to do this here. I'm going to put the aggro onto here, and this is why I can't do that with the damage. We have to switch this out and do it over." So he's explaining what he's doing, but he's just doing it as he does it. But he's one guy doing it, so he doesn't have to go through the nonsense of
code review.
All the coders kind of talking, "Oh, you're making a change here, but this could affect what this other person's working on over here. We need to make sure we coordinate that." So that makes it harder, but it's a necessity. But also, it shouldn't take that long either, when you're trying to develop stuff. So that's part of the problem too, is the bureaucracy gets in place, and it can hamper trying to do nimble programming in that regard.
Right. And
or agile programming is the thing.
Yeah, agile. Yeah. Getting into a 2-week sprint, depending on what's going on, seems reasonable. But like, I think maybe saying like, "Hey, get it into like the production build." Yeah, 2 weeks seems reasonable. get into dev in the first and that day. Yeah, we could just in dev that day. Heck yeah,
no.
we can put that
You
stuff.
should be able to have a dev department where you can do that faster, and then, but you still do want to make sure it's in the vault and the people have checked on it and written, and they know. So you have to have dailies of these are the code changes for the day. Here's what it's affecting. If you're working on these systems, you can make sure you read them in and see how it's going to affect you. Vote back and say, no, you take it out. Those discussions can take half, but you still put it in there.
Right.
In a dev environment. So.
Depending on, but like we could also, that's us looking outside into this. I'm sure
without seeing, we don't know what they're doing and everything. So
yeah, I'm so glad he's gone. Then we can talk trash about him. No, we don't also would know like their coding style, where their sprint schedule is. If they do that, they could be Cowboys, woohoo, Leroy Jenkins style. They just code straight.
What type of object oriented containers do they have set up? How is the model? How are the models data based? That sort of thing. There's a lot that goes into the programming of that stuff, where you kind of have to make sure, like what I said, Pirate Software. It hit me because he was actually working on something where he was trying to do something like that, where the multiple damage of an arrow took place and it was calculated, and he realized that with the tools that he had, that it couldn't be done in the way it was developed where he wanted to do it. So he had to figure out where to put it. So it was a little bit of work that had to go in there. So that's why it kind of triggered me when you were talking about that specific example. Right. Seeing developers doing that stuff is kind of interesting to watch for me, because I wanted to be a coder when I grew up, and I just went a different path, but I still have a little bit of that in me. But
yeah, the video talks about a lot of different things. There was a game that came out last year that was called The Mortals of Avram. Have any of you three heard of that game at all? That game was in the top 10 of most expensive games ever made.
Wow.
Budget wise, it was a company's first game ever. It was their first game ever.
Okay.
And they had like $125 million to make this game.
I'm looking at it. I've never heard of this thing.
Exactly. You have never heard of this game before at all. And they took a random chance on a game that was basically a third-person shooter, but instead of guns, it was magic.
Ooh,
but it was but the world is very generic. Like the main character's name is like Jake something, and he's just like a generic white guy protagonist. Like it's real generic for a fantasy for fantasy thing. And within like 6 months, 45% of them got cut.
Well,
and
here's
then
what
the rest
sounds like
got
to me.
furloughed already because they don't know if they're actually going to have a company anymore. But they put all of this money and budget on something that was very similar to a bunch of other games, because that's what people want, because that's what the big companies want to put their money into, because in their heads it's easy for them to play it safe and go with whatever's already in the market. And when you compare things to the example you gave, when you look at old AAA to what is basically now double or single A games now, and then what they do for AAA games, he was talking about World of Warcraft and how they only had like 100 people on staff when they made the game. I think that
started at
50.
It started at 40.
Yeah, 40.
Yeah, because I was just watching the video. It was 40, and then they went to 100. Yeah,
it was 40, and then then you talked about Helldivers 2, which has 100 people in development.
And that game
Diablo,
be careful.
Diablo 4 had over 9,000 people with their hands in the bucket of making that game. Yes, he made the meme. Yes, he made the meme in the video. He did the over 9,000. But over 9,000 people had input on this AAA game, meaning that whatever original vision that they had gets completely muddled and dragged down because you have 9,000 different ideas and thoughts and opinions and feelings pulling this game into 100 different directions. well, 9,000 different directions technically, but you've created, so these games that were meant to be the things that you were surefire bets don't make the money back, and the things that people like and people are invested in are the smaller games, the Vampire Survivor, the Helldivers 2, the Boltero, I believe it is, the whatever that poker roguelike game is, rogue card game is. Those are the games
Hell,
that people are invested in. These
Helldivers
companies.
2 made a huge blunder in that the way it's coded to play, you have to have a bunch of people on the same server in order to do these types of events, things like that. I guess it's falling apart now because as soon as that player drops a little bit, the player base starts to drop a little bit, it falls apart. And now a lot of people are abandoning it because it's not, you can't play it the way they meant to play it. They need to change it, and they're not changing it to a you have to have some sort of solo play experience, and I guess they don't have that very well in that game. So there's a lot of people who are just like, it was great for like 3 weeks, and then everybody just dropped it.
But for the month or whatever, or however long it was out, that people were really enjoying it. And
what I think you're seeing too is a combination of a lot of different things. One is you've got the muddying the genre aspect that you get with movies and stuff like that, where you get a good blockbuster movie that nobody's ever saw before. Then you've got all the copies come out because people want to try and recapture that, right? This is a different genre, this is a different way, we're going to do it. It muddies the genre, then the genre kind of fizzles out. Also, when AAA games were out, the AAA studios were putting out good products because they had technology that no one else had. They were developing technology that no one else could do, and they were making games that were awe-inspiring in their scope and their playability and that sort of thing. Where now there are so many tools out there that anybody can pick up the tools and start making a game that can compete with that stuff. Right. You're not going to get some of the voice acting unless you pay some money. You're not going to get some of the motion capture stuff if you do, but you're still getting games that you can play that are going to be exciting and hold up against that experience. So now the people who are the AAA game guys are worried about their market share and what they're doing. So they're playing it safe. They're trying to put out stuff that is more generic. Like, let's make another Halo. Let's make another this. Let's make another that. And they're not taking chances with it. Right. Like you have a RimWorld that a guy just did on his own care. He loved it and he made it. It got popular because there was something new and intriguing and interesting about it, in a way that he was letting people get hooked on drugs, and you were slicing limbs off of slaves, and you were doing all these things that are just like no AAA game is going to do.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to piss off people.
I mean, slightly more recent, you have Lethal Company, which is Russian Badger describes it, is a $10 shit post made by a one-man team consisting of a furry.
Yeah, it's true statements.
Yeah, then you've got Tarkov, which a lot of people love a lot. And now they're trying to monetize that in a way that makes complete it just craps all over their fan base.
What you don't think an extra game mode is DLC? But that's not DLC. What are you talking about? That's a mode. So that's not considered DLC, sir. That's not DLC. But it people playing it safe, because they're trying to hold that market value. They're playing it safe. But when you have games like Baldur's Gate 3, which was an indie developed game, it was not a AAA game. The company that made it was not a massive company with all this money. They made a game that people love and adore and won a bunch of Game of the Year awards last year and swept up everything that it touched last year. And
they want the story to continue in DLCs, and they're told they're not getting it.
Yeah, because they don't want to do any of that. And then
we don't want to do this game anymore. We're done.
Yeah. And then you compare it to, Diablo 4, which had a season pass that when you bought the game, you got one free season pass. And when you press the pause menu, the first option your mouse hovers over is cash in your season pass, because we want you to use it now and not wait, because we want that on our books that our season pass was bought. Or let's do a remaster of modern warfare and completely and utterly destroy the whole no Russian scene that was so innovative and talked about to this day from a fucking Call of Duty game that was so narratively impactful that people are like, that if you go to some gamers and go no Russian, they know exactly what you're talking about with no hesitation.
I do have on the monetization stuff. I have a lot of companies are doing a lot of bad stuff in monetization, but I think also people are complaining about things I think are fairly benign. Like if you say we're going to put out a version of the game, $60, and then we have the digital better version or whatever that you get the music and the art included in it for this much money, or the extreme edition that has this stuff and in-game items. I don't think that's really a bad thing, because it gives people who want to spend more money on that game and want those things the option to, but the actual guy who just wants to play the game still has the lower cost version to play it.
I'm sorry, I bought the extreme version of the stream tonight, so I'm going to get you guys down there with your standard edition. Your standards edition.
The peons.
Yeah.
We need the meme of the guys of the Valeri's up there, looking down on the floor.
Yeah.
But it's
okay, so
yes. So but the microtransactions, a lot of stuff in your face, that sort of thing is bad. That's bad UI. That's bad just business.
Yep.
But I think some of these things they're doing for monetization are not terrible.
Right. So some of the additions I get. Some of the additions I completely understand. But when you try to talk about like the Tarkov edition, where they're trying to add an extra $100 to something that somebody already bought, and told them, well, you're not gonna get it, but if you want it, you can upgrade for $100 instead of an extra $250. Or when you go, well, we want you to pre-order this. So our website has 7 different ways for you to pre-order this one game, and the pre-order edition is like twice the price of the actual game, and it adds no real value to the game.
And we're going to release it in waves.
And it has DLC that you have no idea the quality of the DLC is going to be, or if you're even going to like the game before you spend the $200 for this game that isn't even out yet, that you only seen 2 trailers for. Like,
releasing in waves was the worst part. It was like, I'm spending that much money. You've sold me on all of this, which is terrible, right? But you sold me. You've got my money. I want the game. You might get it 3 weeks after these other people get it.
Yep.
Excuse me?
You get early access to the single player game.
3 days early access, and since it's coming off from like a terrible studio, which online probably checking servers, so you don't have access to this thing all the time, and then it's I don't know, coming from someone who does the pre-order games but bought Payday 3 at launch like an idiot. It freaking sucks, because you do buy on this goodwill and you buy this thing, and now you spent all this money, and this thing's a piece of junk and you can't do anything with it, and you end up just stuck. So I broke my own rule like an idiot. Like, no, I don't even buy games that are at least a year old. I'm sorry, I don't even buy year-old games, because I kind of know if there's any fun. I need people out there playing this thing. And if no one's out playing or doing this thing or talking about it, no, F your game. No, because the roadmap of the DLCs is like, it's how they want to get most of their money back instead of making a good like version 1.0 game. It's freak. And yes, I think a lot of these big companies are getting ridiculous with their money-making tactics. Like Hulu pressing pause button, now you get a good ad. It's awful, and I can't wait for that to happen. I'm sure there's someone at EA putting that in the Madden game now. You press pause, and you're probably going to get a DLC ad for FIFA or the other sports game or whatever season pass is coming out there. I just want to play the game. And these AAA studios, to me, like now AAA is a kiss of death. Just like, this AAA game, like, I'm not playing that piece of junk.
Yeah, but you're gonna play GTA 6 when it comes out?
No.
I
I've got GTA 5.
I'll wait.
I love the story in GTA 5 so much that if they can carry that on, great. But the story was fun.
No, I won't buy GTA 6. If I do buy it, it'll be a year out because of Payday 3. I'm sorry.
I got burnt by No Man's Sky, but they actually turned that around and
because
got a lot of goodwill
they
back.
sat down, shut
did the
up,
right
and
thing.
and made the game better.
They did the right thing, and they didn't have to. A lot of the companies never would have done that. The AAA companies wouldn't have done that.
Mm-hmm.
They decided, we're going to make this because this is our baby. We're going to make it work. I mean, they were an indie guys, right? They were just working out of some studio, and then they got bought and made deals and stuff like that. But they were still originally just like 20 guys in a garage at some point. And they committed to it, and they said, no, we're going to stick with this and make it what we told you it would be. And they've done it. They've actually garnered the goodwill that they deserve to have for that game. So,
right, because they spent the time.
If the AAA companies would do that, like if they'd come back and fix Cyberpunk 2077 or whatever, if they had to fix that,
they did.
Maybe not to the same level. No, they fixed some of the bugs.
They fixed it in a manner of when they released the next. They actually released a quality DLC afterwards that people really enjoy, and a lot of people are really back into Cyberpunk 2077 because they see it as a better game. It came off of the Edge Runners when that came out. In
after Edge Runners,
when Edge Runners came out, they really got a lot of people to re-look at the game because they've been working on fixing it.
But was it a paid update or was it a free update?
All the updates for the regular stuff was free, and then they had a DLC.
Yeah, Edge Runners was paid. Yeah,
but then you had the anime, Edge Runner anime that got people to want to go back to look at it. And when they went back and played it before they released the new DLC, people were like, "Oh, the game's way better now." So CD Projekt Red, who fixed their games because they're another company that constantly releases their new games, and it kind of comes out as shit until they fix it later. The Witcher games come out playing like ass.
Yeah,
and they fix it later, and everybody loves them.
That's one aspect of the Fallout show that I thought was crap. There was like no bugs in the show. I was really hoping like one episode was out of order.
Bad drugs? Or...
No, I was hoping like the episode was out of order, or like an episode would just stop working, like on purpose. You have to stop and like.
They're basing it off of the old developer, not the
Just you watch the show and it just goes boom and something comes up on the screen and it just flashes like through and then flips around and then black screen. It comes back up and you go back the first 20-30 seconds later. And
I just want to see somebody just an NPC in the background fall to the floor.
Yeah, just someone just falls to the floor.
They're walking and then just gone.
Yeah, you've got to go to the Amazon
they did make fun. They did make fun of that.
Fix it.
There was literally something they did make fun of in the second episode when Maximus comes down with his power armor and gets his foot stuck in the floor in Philly. That was something that used to happen in Diamond City. In your power armor, you would get stuck glitching through the floor, and I thought that was kind of a little nod to that.
Because he was just stuck for no reason. Then he eventually gets out. He was just stuck.
But but it shows that people care about what they're talking about. And when you look at a lot of these games that were innovative that people really loved, like the Halo games that Paul can verify, he loves all the Halo games. There in that video, there's a lot where Ackman was talking about there's a lot of people who had ideas for other ways to engage in the Halo series. They had like a spinoff of it with another ODST spinoff and things like that. And 343 said no, we don't want that. We want to focus on our Halo Infinite, which is just another multiplayer game that everybody just kind of ignores.
The other thing I also would do too, like also going on to the 2 weeks with the 45-minute fix, just because there's one person working on a game doesn't make it also better.
Right, exactly.
Certain simulator games, which you'll mention, which we will never ever get now.
It's true. But you're more likely to get a more clearer vision of a game when it's less people on it, because you have less hands pulling things around.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, but it's early. All right.
Yeah,
this episode gets too long in the tooth.
How those two things are connected.
Wrapping the sucker up.
That's fine. So yeah, the reason I brought these both together is because a lot of the big issues with the things that are seen like in the AAA market, especially in the bigger Western comic book market. A lot of it comes down to the big things that everybody loves, like the Supermans, the Batmans, the big AAA games, the Call of Duties that people really like. Those kind of games get bogged down with a bunch of other people's putting their hands in the jar and telling you, hey, we need to do this, we need to do that. Yeah, I know you're right, you want to tell this story, but we are going to tell you no, because we want this character to be at this point doing this thing, because that's what we want, not what you want. And when you look at the contemporaries of these things, when you look at the mangas, and then you look at like a lot of these indie games and smaller built games, they don't have that issue. The Baldur's Gate 3 is game of the year, and it was a small group of people at a not a AAA market. Hi-Fi Rush was a game that came out last year that was a small game that was, even though it was an Ubisoft game, I'm pretty sure it was a small game that was a rhythm-based action beat 'em up game that everybody really loved because it was just a small game that people were passionate about making, and it came to life. Power World, when they made Power World, there's like, we'll see if our company dies or not, whatever. We'll see what happens. And now they're like, we have more money than what we know how to do with. This is insane.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah, which is awesome.
And what was the other large world game, MMO type game that came out and died within like 3 weeks? Everybody was playing for a while. I can't remember what it was. But it was.
You have no idea how little that narrows it down.
Yeah, you have no idea.
It was like a year ago. It was like a year ago, and it was it had a bunch of bugs in it, and then people were cheating in it. It just, like I said, it doesn't narrow it down. Yeah, I know what I'm thinking, but I can't picture the name of it.
It could be literally 50 games at this point.
And this was like a huge. Everybody was really looking forward to it.
Valheim, maybe, I don't know. It could have been Valheim.
I think it might have been Valheim. Yeah, I think that might be it. Yeah,
but no, I have no idea. But yeah, it's when you see, when it's always better to see a solid vision done by a smaller group of people going towards one goal than try to force a bunch of people to confine and conform and change things in order to tell a story that doesn't really match what you really want.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Justin, for bringing that topic. Does anyone else want to say their piece before I go into this?
Nope.
Good.
I go, but I want to talk about it afterwards.
Okay, I have a several-hour rant, but I'll save it.
Good. Say before the producer Paul rant down show. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening this far to the new episode of Low Key on the Wheelers Network. If you've gotten this far in the episode, you're a true keeler, you're a true fan. Hey, thank you. This is a live recorded podcast. We start at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Mondays. We did take some time off, but we're gonna be back to doing these things. So we'll see you guys next Monday. What topic we're gonna talk about? Heck if I know. I know I've got a few, but I don't know. We'll see if I can get these pushed through. You can also watch us on twitch.tv/ we are libertarians. The letter R as we are libertarians. You can also get on youtube.com/ we are libertarians. That's just regular RARE, and then also on facebook.com for a while we're still here on Facebook on the Facebook page. All right. That's about it. So yeah, thank you everyone. Say goodbye. We'll see you guys next week. Say bye.
Bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.